Yeah, and thank you for your presentation. I just got two quick questions. One is there was a huge emphasis here on private investment and the investment by developers and how to facilitate them in the Shannon Estuary. And I suppose my question is, what happens if that investment fails to deliver or reach the targets that is envisaged in this presentation? I mean, it's a big scale of investment, 100 billion, and if that is failed by private investment, is there any role at all for the state and state investment in delivering what's needed? And given the previous conversation around the scale of the crisis and the rapidity with which the climate catastrophe is hurtling towards us, do you see any role for the state? And my second question is your attitude to the perspective and possible development of a Shannon LNG terminal. How does that fit in with this plan? Do you see it as a help, as a rival, or do you have any opinion on it at all in terms of our energy security? And does the location of an LNG in the Shannon port, is that factored into your overall plan here? Thank you.
So in relation to, I suppose, the state playing a role in the investment in energy infrastructure, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the state has made the decision that it more or less wants the privatisation of energy generation, and that's probably a bigger question. That's certainly the way I suppose the state has approached it in latter times, and if we look across Europe, the private sector has been more than willing to step up to the plate, I think, to invest in this, so which says that this is a commercial enterprise and the state need not necessarily be involved in the investment side, but obviously it has to be involved in the regulatory side of it, absolutely. So I think that's the approach. From what we see, I think there is significant private sector interest from large global multinational companies to invest and to unlock this potential resource. Obviously the state's role is probably more regulatory in that, but the state can certainly gain significant new revenue streams out of this resource, and I think it can be creative in how it does that, absolutely. And again, we look across to our neighbours in the UK and to see how much the Crown Estate generates in revenues and pays dividends back into the UK exchequer on an annual basis. We have I suppose MAR is about to be set up. Could that be looked at in a commercial as well as a regulatory mandate, and follow some of the Crown Estate as an example. So I think there is a role definitely for the state in this. I think a lot of the private sector, the big money investment can be made and will be made by the private sector. In relation to, I suppose, Shannon LNG, it's obviously hugely topical. The Europeans have certainly in their taxonomy included both gas and nuclear as part of the transition. Obviously there's ongoing debate on LNG in Ireland, as part of the security of supply. And I think at the moment the Shannon LNG application is before An Bord Pleanála for adjudication later this year. And again, I suppose it's the question of how, again, the country and the committee maybe sees the role of gas as part of the transition. But I think, broadly speaking, commentators and as well accepted that, gas will be required as a transition. Now, whether that gas is LNG, and LNG obviously can be natural gas or fracked. And I think the main issues around gas LNG in this country are probably on the fracked piece of it. But certainly there is a project on the Shannon Estuary with a planning live with An Bord Pleanála at the moment.